Hi, everyone. Welcome to data preparation and cleaning workshop with Tableau Prep. Um, Today, I will provide instruction and materials about how to work with the Tableau Prep, which is useful for cleaning, preparing the data before doing the visualization. So it's like the pre-processing a step before creating the visualization. You want to make sure that your data is clean, which means, for example, there is no, for example, not any missing values in your table, which might which might create some problem during the visualization, or even you can do some pre-processing by calculating different variables before doing the visualization. So that's all sort of different processing that we will do in this workshop. So the outline is which is provided here. So let me put this link into the chat. So you can access this website with the link I put in the chat. So the outline in this workshop is to introduce some information about the workspace of the Tableau Prep software and explore its interface and how to connect your data set with the Tableau Prep and how we could use some filtering to analyze and filtering your data set. And also we will move on to how to use the Tableau Prep for cleaning the data set after that. And finally, we will give some information about some table operation, calculating some variables, new variables based on your existing data set. And at the end, there is a homework that you can just go through it and turn your visualization to receive the certificate until last week, June 2nd. So the prerequisite for the workshop is to download and install the Tableau Prep. If you have it on your computer and if you install it, you should be able to follow the workshop materials here. But if not, you can just download the Tableau Prep from this link, and also make sure that you register with your Clemson username and password for receiving a license, because in Clemson University, we have the license for the Tableau Prep. But for the sake of this workshop, if you want to just use it for this workshop, it's also possible to just use the free trial version as well. But the license for the Clemson University will give you a full year access to the Tableau Prep. And also, in order to follow the workshop material, you need to have the data set, which is the COVID-19 data set at the county level in the US on October 26th, extracted from the New York Times repository. So I put the link of downloading the data set as well into the chat. So you should be able to click on the link and download it from here. So I would download it myself as well. And if you access to the website also, you should be able to just download it in the prerequisite section. So I wait a minute or two to just make sure that everybody was able to download the data set, and also there is no problem with downloading and installing the Tableau Prep or any other issue that you might encounter, or if there is any questions or comments. Thank you. So I wait a minute or two, and then we will jump to the first section of the workshop. So if you have any question, feel free to put in the chat, so I will try to answer that. Okay. Is there any issue with downloading the software, installing the software, or any other comment or questions or problems with downloading the data set? Not?
When,
Okay, go ahead.
when we download the Tableau Prep Builder, we click on Start a Trial, Activate by signing into a server, Activate with. So which option do we?
For the workshop, you can use the free trial version, but as I said, we have the license in Clemson University. If you want to access that license, you can just search for Tableau student. And in Tableau for students, I just put the link into the chat. You can click here, get Tableau for free, and then register here. Just put your name and information, and also make sure that you use your Clemson email here, and then it just sends you the license for a full year access to the Tableau Prep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but for this workshop, it might be easier if you don't have it. You can just use the free trial version and register it later on tomorrow or whenever that you want. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other issue or comments that you have before jumping into the first section of the workshop? Okay, so I will go to the next section. So if you have the Tableau software and if you open it, you should see this user interface here. Basically, there are some sections in this user interface. The first one is the recent flows, which means that if you opened some Tableau Prep flows before, it just show you the files. But if you don't have something here, don't worry, because it's just only for if you opened some files before. But if just the first time that you open the Tableau Prep, here you see might see empty or nothing in that recent flow section. And the sample flows are just the ones that are some samples that are given by the Tableau Prep for training and tutorials. And you can just open an existing flow with clicking on the open flow. It just wants you to find a Tableau Prep flow if you have an existing Tableau Prep flow. And the first option that we might use here to connect to the Tableau Prep to our data set is called the connect to data. So if you click on the connect to data, it will show you a list of options that you can use for connecting your data to the Tableau Prep. The first section is the connecting Tableau Prep to a file, which means that you downloaded or have the file already in your computer and you want to just load it into the Tableau Prep, which is the way that you would use the Tableau Prep in this workshop. But also it's possible to use the Tableau Prep by connecting it to the some data server like the Amazon, Azure, or other data server like the Google BigQuery or SQL server. So it's also possible to work with some online servers, and whenever the data changes, also your workflow could be updated, and also you don't need to fetch the data locally in your machine. So it might be good for creating the visualization or workflows from the online data servers. But for this workshop, we would use the Tableau Prep by connecting to a file, local file that we already downloaded in our local machines or computers in the previous section. So that was just the general different sections of the Tableau Prep and the connection to the data that I said that we have two modes for connecting of our data. And let's go to the connect, click on the connect to the data, and click on text file. The file that we downloaded here is a CSV or comma separated value file, which means that we have the rows and columns, and the columns are separated with the comma from each other. And we try to load that, which is identified by Tableau Prep as a text file. So we load that text file into the Tableau Prep. Click on the text file. So you can just click on the connect to data and click on the text file here. And click on the file that you downloaded here, which might be in your computer, US-counties.csv, or you can just see that here. And click open. And it would open your file here. You see that you have the connection to that file here, which means that we connected to that local file that we imported into the Tableau Prep. And also it says that you are working on with the one table, which is called the US counties or other name in your machine. The thing is here is that you can also work with the Excel sheet, Microsoft Excel sheets, that you can have multiple sheets or multiple tables in a single file. So if you have multiple sheets or multiple tables in a single file, it would just list all the tables or sheets for you here in the tables section. But for this data set, we have only one tables here. There are some information in the input section. The first one is the settings. Of course, you see the name or the connection for the file that we used for our connection to import the data. For a free trial, it's still the full version. So it means that you have access to all the options. But in order to register for the student license that we have in the Clemson University, you need to click on this link that I put in the chat, is tableau.com academic students. I just put it again in the chat. And if you go here and click on get Tableau for free, and you need to register here, just put your name, email address, your Clemson University email address, and some other information, and a school name. Just make sure that you choose the Clemson University, just identify it automatically, and then you should be able to receive that license and be able to register your Tableau Prep software for a full year access, free access. But for this workshop, you should be able to use the free trial mode as well. Does that answer your question? Okay, good. So as I said, we have some information about the data that we loaded. This link I put in the chat again is the link I just sent you, is the link for registration, and for the downloading is this one, which I put in the chat. Is the link for downloading the software, and also a link for downloading the data set is here. Again, I put it in the chat. And also link to the website to follow the workshop material is again here. So these are all the links that were in the chat in case that you missed them. Okay, so the first one is just the name of the file, as we saw that, but we would be able to edit or change the file here. So we don't want to do that here. In order, the Tableau Prep could identify the name of the columns or the header of your file automatically, but you can just tell the Tableau Prep that the first line or the first row in your data set is the name of the columns or the header. So that's the option for identifying the correct name for the columns or the headers. And the file, as I said, is just the field separator or the character that separates the columns from each other is comma, but there are some other information, or even you can just identify, use the automatic one or any other information, any other option like the tab, semicolon, a space, or other characters. If you click on the multiple files, as I said, we have just a single table here, but if you work with Excel sheets or Excel files, you might have several tables or several sheets in a single file. If you go to data sample, click on the data sample, because if your data is big, it tries to, for better performance, it tries to filter your data for just use a fixed amount of rows in your data set for better performance, but you can also tell Tableau Prep to use all your data or all the rows in your data, so you can just change it. I want to just use all the rows in my data, so I would change that to the use all data here. But also you can just tell Tableau Prep to use fixed number of rows as well. So, and also any change that we made to the data, for example, apply some filters, table operation, or whatever operation that we would apply on the data set would show up here as in the changes. But because we don't have any changes, so it's just empty right now. So these are the options in the input section. Here we see some summary about the data, about different fields or different columns that we have in our data set. We have, for example, the date, which means that the date or the day for the number of the cases or the number of deaths of the COVID-19 in different counties is recorded. The name of the county, the name of the state, the FIPS or FIPS is the code for each county. And it is cases, and the deaths are the ones, the numerical value of the number of the cases and deaths of the COVID-19 cases. Now, the first thing to notice here is that we could change the data type. The data type is usually identified automatically by Tableau Prep. The date is identified as the date. So you can change your data type to numbers or any other data, like a string or date and time or the numbers. The difference between the date default and date and time is that is about the granularity of your date. For example, if your date is just about day, months, and year, you can just use the date default. But if you have some information about the hours, minutes, or seconds in your date, you can just use the date and time. So that's the difference between date and time. But we don't have any information about the hours or minutes or seconds about our data, the date granularity here. And the strings are just the strings. For example, the state or the county are just strings. And the cases or the deaths are just the numbers. The decimal, which means that it could be just the integer number, but we know that the cases and deaths are the integers, but we want to just make them more general to use the number whole, which means that it could be a float number as well. So these are the information about how we could change some information about the connection, identify the headers, and use all the data samples. And the last thing is that we could apply some filters here right away before doing any operation or any step. If you click on the filter values, you can write some conditions here to filter your data set. For example, the first condition that I want to apply here is that because this data set is about the COVID-19 cases and deaths across all the counties in the US, I want to filter the data only for the state of South Carolina. So I would apply a filter to filter the state of South Carolina. So I need to put a Boolean expression here, which means that the Tableau Prep should be able to examine that Boolean expression, and based on the true and false result of that expression, it would filter your data set. So the first, as I said, I want to just make sure that I just filter for the state of South Carolina. And this expression means that the estate field or the estate column should be, if it's equal to the South Carolina, the result is true. And if it's not, the result would be false. So it just filters the data based on this condition for me. Yes, yeah, it just one, yeah, it just one equal sign here. Yeah, good point. Thank you. Yeah. Now, it means that the estate, if it's equal to the South Carolina, it would just, the result would be true. And if it's not, the result would be false. So it would filter the data based on this expression. But it's always good to check that the calculation is valid or not here. So for example, if I just remove this one as well, you see that there is an error here. So it just says that there is a unexpected text, which means that it cannot identify why that South Carolina string is there. And also, if your expression doesn't return a Boolean value, it just complains that the filters always, the expression that is put in the calculation or the add filter should always return a Boolean value. So the state, it just returns the string because we know that the data type of the state is just a string, but we could just make sure that the calculation is valid. So it just tells you that if the syntax of the expression that you are trying to write is correct or not. So it's always good to check that. And if I click on the save here, it would filter the data set for me. And you see that for the state here, I have only the value of the South Carolina. And also, as I said, if we apply any changes or filters or any operation on the data set, it would show up here. So I would be able to modify that by just clicking on that modification here. This modification sign, I can change this expression. For example, make it Georgia or any other expression that you want to use for the filtering. Or if you want to just remove it altogether, you can just click on this and it will just remove it altogether for you. So again, I would just put that. Here. Yeah. So any changes would show up here that you can just modify it or remove it. So it's good to know which workflow is applied on your, which filter, which operation is applied to your data set. So we see that how to filter the data sets, and now we are able to move on to use other options or operations in the Tableau Prep. In order to access the same workbook until this step, you can just download it from this link, which is just, I put just a packaged flow created in this section in that file that you can just download it right away and open it in Tableau Prep. So you should be able to see these changes applied, and the filter is applied also to reproduce the results. So I'm just putting that link into the chat as well. Before jumping into the next section, any comments, any questions? Any question about the filtering, importing the data set into the Tableau Prep, or changing some parameters that we saw for the data type, or applying the filters? All right, so let's move to the next.
Just thought of something. So
Okay.
if we wanted to say, let's say, South Carolina and North Carolina, for example, both states, then how would we write that?
Yes. So you want to put multiple conditions, or a combination of the conditions here. So the South Carolina, the state cannot be equal to South Carolina and North Carolina at the same time. So it means that the state should be equal. If I want to just filter the South Carolina and North Carolina, the state should be equal to South Carolina or North Carolina. So I could just use the or here and copy and paste this guy here and change this one to the North Carolina. Yeah. So this or is the logical or, which means that it says it just tries to identify if the state is equal to South Carolina or either equal to the North Carolina. Just click on save. And it would just filter the data based on that condition for us. So that's how we could combine multiple conditions, or you can just have another or here, or to have another one. And to have and, we can just put and here, which again is a logical and it should just return nothing here. Yeah. Because a state cannot be equal to South Carolina and North Carolina at the same time. But we can just use it for example, here says that I want a state to be equal to the South Carolina, and the cases would be greater than 10. Yeah, you see that the cases are always greater than 10, so you can just have some more complex conditions to filter your data set. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So I would remove this one, this guy here. So I would just stick to the simple condition that we have here. Okay, so the first step, we could build a workflow in the Tableau Prep, which means that, for example, load the data, apply some filters, and then move on to cleaning a step, or different steps that are available in Tableau Prep that we will go through each of them one by one. Here you can just add different steps. If you click on this plus sign here in front of these US counties, or the initial file that you imported into the Tableau Prep, there are several steps that we could use for adding different workflows. The first one is the cleaning step, which we will show how we could use that for the cleaning. We could do some aggregation by applying some aggregation functions. In order to import the data, I just put open another Tableau Prep here. In order to open the data, open the Tableau Prep, click on Connect to Data. Here, click on Text File, and click on the file that you downloaded here. Click Open, and it should open the file for you. So that's the way that we import file into the Tableau Prep. Does it answer your question? Good. So I'm going to we are using the Tableau Prep, and for importing the data, we would just click on the Connect to Data, click on the text file, and then just choose the file, and it should be able to open and or import your data into the Tableau Prep. And for the link, which link you mean is the link for the data, or the link to the material, or the link to download the software? Which link are you referring here? The link to to download the Tableau Prep is this. To download the software, to download the data set, this, and it's a download. It's just a link to the material of the workshop. And also, if you're referring to the downloading the workbook that I created, you should be able to use the last link to just download the workbook. If you click here on the workbook, you can just click this workbook and just open the workbook right away or open the flow right away in the Tableau Prep. Again, yes, if you don't want to create the the workbook that we are currently created here from scratch, I'll just remove this guy. Yes, if you don't want to create this workflow that we created here from scratch, you can just click on this link to download the workflow, and just click here to download it, and then load it right away in the Tableau Prep, and you should be able to see the exact same configuration that we are seeing here. So I just open a new Tableau Prep, open a flow instead of connecting to a data set, and I'm just clicking on the workflow that I downloaded here, which is the US counties Tableau workflow file, and click on open. So it's the same thing that we had here. You just right away had the state filter, and so it just the ones that we just gives you the same configuration as we are working right now here. Any other questions or comments? In Tableau Prep, we only work with the workflows, which means that you package the data set and all the operations that you did on the data set into a single file, and you can ship that single file to any other user, and that those users should be able to open that workflow right away and see your operations. And the book is the workbook is the file that we usually use for the Tableau desktop. So we don't have the workbook here. So that's usually used for the Tableau desktop, not Tableau Prep. Okay. So as I said, if you click on this plus sign, whichever you want, you can just click on to download the data set and import it by connect to data and create these filters from scratch. Or if you prefer, you can just click on the OpenFlow and work with that workflow right away. So either one is okay. So it's just up to you. Yeah. Good. As I said, we have different steps that we will go through each of them separately. So the cleaning step is obviously is for the cleaning the data, and the aggregation is just for the aggregate is for aggregating the data, for example, calculating the sum, averages, mean values, or some aggregation. The pivot is just something like the transposing your table, just changing the position of the column and rows. The join and the union are similar to just joining or merging two different workflows or data set together. And the script is for writing the script, which will not go through that for this workshop. And the output is for saving the final output of the Tableau Prep, which we could use that for using the Tableau desktop in the next weeks right away. So these are the different steps that we would be able to use for different operation. The first one that we will go through in this step is the clean step. If we click on the clean step, it would just create a new step for us. First, we have some information. Before starting to do any operation, the Tableau Prep may identify some errors or issues in your data set automatically. So it might have some recommendation for you. And the thing it just tells me here is that it recommends to change the data role of the estate to estate province, which is correct because we know that the estate is just the estate in the United States. So that field represents the estate of the US. So that might be more useful later on if we want to use this, the output of this workflow for visualization in the Tableau desktop in the next weeks. So I click here and it just tells me to change that to the state province and I click on apply. So that would do the recommendation. So that was the only recommendation I had here. So we see some information, general information about the filtered data that we got from the previous step or any other data that we got from the previous step. Similar to what we have before, we could change the data type. So it has more options like, for example, it has some roles for the data, geographic, URL, email, or any type of the data set that you have, for example, here. And it just identified the estate field as the estate province, but it didn't identify the county as the county for the geographic role. So I would just click here for the county, go to the geographic, and I would change it to the county here. The cleaning here, which means the cleaning here, which means that we could remove the not available or missing values from our data set, which might create problem later on for the visualization. The first thing you will notice here that if there is any missing value, for example, you have different rows or columns, but in some rows you have not information about any specific columns for that specific row. For example, you have a row that you know the date, county, state, but you don't have any value for the FIPS, but you know the cases and deaths. So that missing value for the FIPS might create some errors or issues later on if we want to use it for the Tableau desktop and the visualization. So in order to remove those missing values, we could just click on the null, or right click on the null, and we have two options: to keep that missing value or exclude it. Exclude would just remove that for us. Before applying that, all the null values is not that if it's just we put the null in the FIPS or any other columns here. The null is identified automatically by Tableau Prep. So which means that no matter how your data set is big, if there is any missing values in any column, it would just show up as a single null here. And it just, for here, it just have one value, which means that one row has that missing value, but that row could be 1,000, million, or any other value for that missing value. And those missing values, all of them are aggregated in just one option as the null. And then we could just exclude, and it would just remove, for example, 1 million rows that have a missing value. So it's not like that we want to have different type of the null or missing values for different fields or types. Does that answer your question? Yeah, my purpose was that the null is not the null string or null that we put into any rows of this data set. The null means that there is nothing in that rows or columns, and then it just could aggregate all the missing or nulls together, so that you can just remove them all together in once. Yes, if you just put the question in for everyone into the chat, that might be useful for other users also to follow the questions and answers here. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so as I said, we want to remove this null value. So we want to click, right click on the null and click on the exclude, which would exclude the null values for us. So you just remove that row altogether that has the null or the missing value. And you have some overview of what your table looks like here. So you might get some idea about the table, what the table looks like actually. So there are some other options besides removing the missing values in the cleaning step. We could create some calculated fields, which means that we want to, for example, use a formula or expression for calculating a new data from our existing fields. If we click on the create calculated field, we could write any expression to calculate any new fields. The first thing that we want to put is the name of that field, which means that you just choose whatever name that you want to have. And the other one is the expression that you put here, similar to what we have for the filtering. And here there is a list of different functions that are available in Tableau Prep in case that you want to search for any functions. And also it just gives you a brief description of what this function is going to do. So you have different type of the functions that you could use here. So the purpose here is to calculate the moving averages in a specified windows because the COVID-19 data set is a noisy data, which means that it just change its direction up and down really quickly in different days. So we want to do some averaging or aggregation based on creating some averages in a specified window, which means that we want to take the average in a week, 2 week, or 10 days, which we call them moving averages, weekly, bi-weekly, and 10 days window. So we want to calculate these three different fields here. The weekly, which means that we need to truncate the timeline for the date field into weekly chunks, which means that we need to just create a sub set of our data set in a weekly chunks and then calculate the average in those weekly chunks and then put them together to calculate the moving average in a weekly basis. The bi-weekly basis is the same thing, but just the chunks are in the 2 weeks or the bi-weekly. And the 10 days are just the chunks again is the 10 days. So these are the similar concept for calculating the moving averages, weekly, bi-weekly, and 10 days, but we need to use different expression to calculate them. So the first one that we would use here is called the weekly. So I'm going to copy the expression here that I would just describe what this expression means. So I would just put the weekly for the expression. And this weekly field gives me the weekly chunks of my date field, which means that it just tries to create a subset of the date based on the weekly chunks. So, or truncate my date. So I'm using the date trunc function, which means that it could truncate the date into weekly. So the granularity I want to use is week, but you can just use monthly or yearly if you have information about the week, month, or year. But the purpose here is to separate or truncate the date into weekly chunks. So the granularity is the first option that we put into the date trunc function here, which is week. This date is just the name of the field that we use for the date here. And this Monday, which tells the date trunc function that the week starts from the Monday, but you can change to any other date that you want to use. So, but I would just use the default value for the Monday. And again, check that the calculation is valid and there is no error. So we could click on save. And it would just truncate my date into weekly chunks. You see that for the date, we have 234 unique values, but for the weeklies, we have only 34 unique values, which means that it just truncated or the dates that were in a single week, they are collapsed in the single value. So we have less unique values for the weekly. And we could, for the bi-weeklies, we have different expressions. So I'm going to put that also in the bi-weekly. But before going to that, we could have separate steps for a single data set. So I want to, because I want to create 3 different workflows for calculating the weekly, bi-weekly, and 10 days moving averages. And at the end, I want to combine or union them or merge these 3 different moving averages and write them to a single file for the further visualization. So I would create a new step instead of putting create a new calculated field here right away besides the weekly. So I would create a new clean step by clicking on this plus sign. Again, I want to exclude the null values similar to what we had before. If I just put it here, you see the workflow better. So instead of the weekly, I would have the bi-weekly here. So that's the expression for the bi-weekly. So the logic here, which is different from what we had for the weekly, was to see that if the the distance between a first date that we have in our data set is divisible, for example, by 14 or any other type of the uh, uh, window date that we have, then we truncate or collapse or those dates into a single value. Because later on we would see that we don't want to have an interference between the weekly, bi-weekly, or 10 days moving averages windows because we use different windows, the date windows. If we want to use calculate the average at the end automatically, it would just have some interference with other the other time windows that we calculated here. So we just create separate cleaner steps for any type of the moving average that we have here. Yes, for creating the moving average too, I will just remove this again. And we can click on this plus sign here and click on the cleaner step similar to what we had before. And exclude the nulls and put bi-weekly here, which again, as I said, it just tries to understand that if the modulo of the division of the date, if it's converted, if it's converted to an integer, is divisible by 2, and then just tries to chunk them again by the week, which means that we want to just chunk them in the bi-weeklies. So I would create that the bi-weekly as well. And again, the third one, again, I click on this plus sign and click on the cleaner step. And I would exclude that. And the last one is the 10 days. So instead of biweekly, it tries to understand if the date, if it's converted to an integer, is divisible by 10. If it is, which means that it's in the 10 days time window, or it just chunked into the 10 days. So otherwise, we just minus that the first starting date from the one that we are standing at, that to just make sure that we are returning that same value for all the days that are fall in the 10 days. So that's the expression for the 10 days again, and click on. Yeah. So now we have 3 different cleaner step extracted from the single file or the single file that we loaded here. So these are, you can just have any other step here that then you can just create your workflow further on. Okay. As I said, we want to calculate the average separately, and the average needs just take the average over the window that we define in each cleaner step. If you have multiple windows in a single cleaner step, the moving average would not be correct because it would be confused to which one to use. But we want to just make them separate. Then we later on that we calculate the average to just calculate average corresponding to each time window that we define, and then at the end again merge them together for writing it to a single file. But here here in this one, I just use the old method that I just put all the fields together in a single clean step. So you can have them in a single one as well. If you want to just access that in a single one, because I just realized that it might be more cleaner if we just separate them, but it might be also possible to create them in a single file as well. So that's the one I put into the single one. And before moving to the next step, the one thing that we forgot is to change the data type of the new calculated field to date, not date time. So I would just change all of this to date time, date, not date. Yeah. Any other questions? Any other question, comments about cleaning step, new calculated fields? Yes, yeah. The first one, we calculated the time window based on the weekly. The second one was based on the biweekly, and the third one was based on the 10 days window that we later on we see that how to calculate the average based on those time windows. Yeah. The null values was the ones that you want to remove, the ones that have the missing value. So if I want to create a new clean step, you see that the null values here. If you right click on that, you see the exclude. So the exclude would just remove that automatically. What's the issue with that null values? I'm not sure what's the error here, because even I can undo that, removing the null values. So if you click on that or any other, not just, are you able to right click on any other ones of these ones or any other data that we have here for and see the keep only that and exclude? So it's not just for the null values. Oh, that's strange, because is this the issue only with the null, or any other ones you click and right click to see that error that says that something is wrong and cannot do that? Is this still showing any issue or error? Or also, if it just show the error, it might be useful to close the Tableau Prep and open it again. Might resolve that issue, but I'm not sure. The one that we have in the FIPS, the first one here is called the null in the FIPS, and click on exclude. There is no other null here. So that's the only one that we have as null here in this data set. It's a bit strange because I never encountered that issue. So, okay, can you just take a screenshot from the error that you are seeing and just send to my email address? I would just try to look into it and see if I could just resolve that. Sorry for that. I never saw that issue. I'm not sure if any other user also have any issue similar to that. Anybody else encountered that issue or not?
Missed the last step because I was interrupted here, sorry, but so the part that after we create the three things like the weekly, the bi-weekly, and the 10 days, then we have to change, I'm seeing like in the instructions, we have to change the initial data type.
Yes, yeah, I just changed that the bi-weekly to date and the weekly also to the date here. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try that.
Yeah. Yes, you can just do it in a single step as well. That's the way I did it initially. And if you download the workflow at the end of this section, you would find it in a single step. So that's another way to do that. Yeah, that's also possible. That's also the one that is originally described in the material in the website. So that's also possible. And also this is another way to show that how we could just use different steps from a single file, but that's also possible. Okay, I'm glad that it worked also. So any other question or comment? So let's move on to the next section, which is the table operation. So as we saw that we cleaned the data, created some calculated new fields, and now we want to calculate the averages based on those three different time windows that we had. So the next step that we will use here is the aggregate, which we would use it for the aggregation. The aggregated step is for the aggregating the results based on functions of sum, average, minimum, or maximum. Also, it's possible to apply these aggregating function based on grouping of some of the fields together. And we want to calculate the averages of different counties in the South Carolina for cases of deaths and deaths. So as a result, the county field should be a grouping variable, which means we want to calculate the moving average for different counties separately. So it may not really make sense to create a single average for all the counties. If we wanted to do it for just a state of the South Carolina, that would make sense to do it for all the, just aggregate all the counties together. But right now, because we are just working in the different counties across the South Carolina, so we want to use the county field as a grouping value. For doing it in the Tableau desktop, you don't have access to the similar workflow in the Tableau desktop. For example, there is no way to clean the data in the Tableau desktop to remove the missing values. It's possible to do some aggregation, creating new table operations or table fields, but there is no access to clean the data set, merge some data sets together, and create a final data set that could be used right away in the Tableau desktop. But for the Tableau desktop, the only way which is available in the Tableau desktop is the table operation, which is also available in the Tableau desktop. We will see in the next weeks how to use the Tableau operation, table operation in the Tableau desktop. But you don't have access to the cleaning, do some merging, unioning, or different data sets together. So that's the way, that's the reason why we need to use the Tableau Prep for that. Okay, so each of the cleaning steps, we want to apply an aggregation. So for the first one, I just click on the click and aggregate. And as I said, the county is the grouping field. So I would just drag and drop the county into the grouped fields. I could just remove all and do it again. So as I said, we want to calculate these moving averages for different counties. So the county is a grouping field. So I would drag and drop the counties into the grouped fields. And the aggregated fields are the ones that we want to use for the calculation of the averages, the cases, and diffs. We drag and drop the aggregated and diffs into that. And also, I would put the weekly also into the grouping fields. And here I would apply the function that I want to use. So here is the average. So I would just put the average. So you can just have any other type of the aggregation function like the summation, median, or minimum, maximum, standard deviation variances for different aggregated fields. But here I want to just apply the moving averages or the averages aggregation. I would do the same thing for the other cleaning steps that we have here also. Again, the county and the biweekly are these guys into the grouping fields, and the defs are in the aggregation. So again, these are the averages. And for the last one, so we created these three different aggregation here based on the three different windows that we have. So before try to merge these data sets together, any questions, any comments about, any question, any comment about how to do the aggregation, any issue that you encountered in the aggregation? Okay, so there would be a merging step that we want to just merge all these three different aggregation together. So then next step that would just union all this aggregation to a single one. The union would just simply would just glue or union all the data sets together, but the join is you have more availability in terms of the how you want to merge them. For example, you want to just keep just only the intersection of two data sets, or the data points that are not included in one of them, or any other type of the grouping modes. So you have in the join, you have more options to how to join or how to merge two different data set. But in the union, it's just simply that you glue or merge all the data sets together. So that's the difference between the union and join. The join gives you more option about how you want to merge two data sets together. Here we want to just simply put these data sets together. So we would use the union, but we will go through the join as well to see how we have different options for the join. The last step here is union. So I created a union here by just clicking on the union. And in order to connect these two other aggregation to this union, I would just drag and drop that, and also again drag and drop to the add here. So you see that it just union the 10 days, bi-weekly, weekly, and in three different type of the data set that we are trying we try to merge together, so or union together. So you see that the inputs are the aggregate 1, aggregate 3 and 5, or whatever name that you want to have here, and these are the ones that we have here for different time windows. But for the join, if we click on the join instead of the union, and for example, add this guy here. First, we need to find out what we want to use as a joining clause, which means that what field in the first data set is equal to the other one. So we know that the county is the same county in the other one. And here you have some availability to how to join these two data set together. For example, this is just the intersection of that. I can just click on that, click on the intersection and the other ones, or I could just remove this guy and just click on the intersection, or this one, which is equal to the first here. So it just gives you some availability about how you want to merge or join this data set. So that's the difference between the join and the union. So the union just simply you put all the data sets together, and the union is different in terms of how you can just join these two data set together based on for example, different type of the intersection or different interference of these two data set together. Okay, so we want to union them, but before the unioning of this tree aggregation, I would just go one step back, and the thing we forgot to put here is to create a new calculated field to put now instead of creating the fields as the bi-weekly, weekly, or 10 days, we could just name it moving average type, moving average date, and then put the moving average type in a new calculated field. So I'm going to edit this, rename it to moving average dates for all the ones that I had here. So here I could just rename these fields regardless of if it's moving average for the weekly, bi-weekly, or 10 days. So I'm just going to do that. And then back to here to put a new calculated field as the moving average type, which for this case is weekly. So I would put the weekly here. I would put the bi-weekly here. And I would put the 10 days here. That would give me a more clean union at the end. Because I want to have a single column name for each of the aggregation that I calculated here, and at the end for example, for the next step, which would be the visualization, I want to be able to have a field that gives me the type of the moving average that I calculated, and I can just simply separate those averages from each other in the Tableau desktop by just using that moving average type field that I calculated here. So that would gives me an ability to just break down the moving averages into 3 different types automatically. Because I have a unified name for the moving average date and moving average type. And if it's the different type, I have that information only embedded into the moving average type field. So that would give me the ability to break it down automatically in the Tableau desktop later on. Yeah. So we saw that how we could change the name of the fields or add any new fields. So now just finally go to the union here and again put these unions together. And now now we could also, I just forgot to put this moving average type that I calculated recently here into the grouping field as well. So make sure that you also drag and drop it into the aggregation in the grouping fields, grouped fields. But now you see that I have that biweekly, 10 days, and weekly in the moving average type as a separate field here that I can use it for the breakdown of different moving averages. And I have I just merged these 3 different ones in a single column by just based on the 3 different moving average type. Yeah. Okay, so the thing that we added newly, let me just remove this union. The first thing I did was to rename this one. For example, this one was named before, this date name was named before bi-weekly, for example. It was like this before. But now I just clicked on the rename field and I just rename it to the moving average date. And for the moving average type, I'm going to remove this and create it from the scratch again. I'm going to calculate the moving average type to average type and put bi-weekly. Click on save. Yeah, but I did the same thing for the other cleaner steps. I just renamed the weekly, bi-weekly, and 10 days to moving average date by just clicking here to the rename field and add a new calculated field, which I call the moving average type. and put the bi-weekly, weekly, and 10 days in that. So that was the only step I added here. Yeah. Any other question? Any other issue? The only steps that are added here was to renaming that weekly, bi-weekly 10 days for the dates. Here, click on the rename field and choose the moving average date and add a new calculated field here. Just put the moving average type here. And the bi-weekly, weekly, and the 10 days for different steps, clean 1, 2, 3 that I had. So that was the only steps that we added. Any issue, any error, any difficulty? And also, I just dragged and dropped this moving average into the grouped fields for the different aggregation. I just did it for the weekly, 10 days, and bi-weekly. Any issue, any questions? So the union was to unioning all these three aggregation into a single one, again, back. So for that, I created a union step by clicking the union here and just drag and drop it into the add here. If you go to the union, you see the add here. So just drag and drop, again, drag and drop for other aggregation. And I'm not sure what's the problem here. There was a typo somewhere. Yeah. The union, as I said, you just simply put the data on something like the stacked on top of each other. You just stacked or union or just put all the datas on all the data on top of each other and just create a single table. But join, as we saw before, if I created join here, click join. First, you need to have two data sets that you want to join. So I would just use the drag and drop the aggregation tree also here. So it wants to know that how to join that. So it wants to know what's the join clause, which means that what is equal or what is not equal or what is greater or what are other conditions here. But I know that, for example, the county in the first the aggregation one is the same county in the aggregation two. And here you have some ability or option to choose how you want to join or merge these two data sets. Do you want to take the intersection of these aggregation one and aggregation three, or you want to choose the values are only in the aggregation one and aggregation tree and remove the intersection? Or you want to just choose the values that are only in the aggregation one, but not in the aggregation tree, or vice versa, or any other combination of these options. So you see that it just changed the mode here graphically as well. So if I choose that one, or so if I choose all the things I have are basically the same thing as what we had in the uh, uh, union steps, but I need to tell the join that the moving average is the same thing, and also moving average date also is the same thing. So it's similar, but you have more options in terms of what you can do for joining or unioning the data sets together. But the union, as I said, it just stack your data sets simply on top of each other. So we went through the union and see how to union these three different data sets together. And the join, we saw that we could have the inner join or outer join or any other combination of that that gives us more ability to merge the data sets together. And right now, the final step here is to create an output, the directly and output. So the final step, click on the plus sign, is the output here. So that's the final table that I want to write here. And I want to just remove the table name, which I don't care about the table name. So I want to just remove that. And that's the final table I have here. So I have the moving average date, moving average type, the county, and the cases and depths, which represents the moving average values. So the output could be a file published to a data source, which means that you want to just make it online, that other users could also access that. And also the database table, which would be a database table, which we will not use that. So we want to write it to a single file in your computer. So we click on the file and click on the browse, and you can just choose any other name that you want to use here. So I would just choose it, output training, click accept. And that's the location that you choose. So that's the name of the file, that's the location of the file, and that's the output type. You can just write it into a Tableau data extract, which is called the hyper, that you can just use it directly into the Tableau desktop. But you can also write it into a Microsoft Excel sheet or a comma separated value as well. So I would just use a comma separated value option here. And also full refresh is the one that you want, you connected to an online data server, and the data server could be refreshed after some time. So we could have an online workflow that could be refreshed every time that the data is changed in your online data server. But for here, we just loaded a local file into our Tableau Prep workflow. So, and finally, just simply, if the data, the workflow doesn't have any error, we should be able to run the workflow finally here. Okay, so I have the same issue. A worksheet name is required. Okay, so let's say I will choose. Okay, I'm not sure because this Microsoft Excel error is only in the final step, so there is no error in other sections, but this complains that For some reason, I'm not sure why, it just complained that there is no sheet one. But yes, so if you just choose the Microsoft Excel and choose a name or whatever name that you want to create and choose a sheet name for the worksheet, and that should be fine here. Let me see if I do it again from the scratch. If I remove this output again, click a new output and put it into the Microsoft Excel and create a new worksheet, sheet one. Yeah. So that would resolve the problem here. You have still same issue or error for that Microsoft Excel? I want to save it, for example, into download and name it output training. Finally, I can just run the workflow. I would just, if it just runs successfully, so it should just show that the finished running workflow done. And you would just write the final Excel sheet that I wanted to write here. So I would have that output training Excel sheet, which contains these moving averages, moving average types, county cases, and depths for the moving average. So that's the output of the outputs. Any issue or any error that you choose, for example, the Microsoft Excel or any other types here. So these are the ones that the visualization that would be created next week from the Tableau desktop by using the files that we created in this Tableau Prep. So you can just load that Tableau, the final file, the final Excel sheet that we created here, and right away import it into Tableau desktop and create the visualization similar to what we have here. And finally, there is a homework similar to what we did here, but with a different data set that you can just download online. So in this homework, you just work with this similar data set for the COVID-19 data set, but at the country level in all the countries in the world, that you can just download the Excel sheet or the data for this data set from this link here. And you can just access that data set from that link and be able to create the similar moving averages and removing all the missing values and the null values from your data set and create the 3 days, 7 days moving averages similar to what we had for the weekly, bi-weekly, and 10 days. And then use the table operation and calculate the 3 days and 7 days moving averages for the total cases, new cases, total deaths, and new deaths. These are the fields that are available in that data set if you download that Excel sheet from that data set, and save the final result into a spreadsheet that could be used directly for the visualization in the Tableau desktop. So that's the homework for this workshop. If you go through that and create that final Excel sheet or a comma separated value or the hyper value for importing into a Tableau desktop. So that would be just the homework for this workshop to receive the certificate for this workshop, certificate of the attendance for this workshop. Any question, any comment about this homework? And you have until the next week, June 2nd, for completing this homework. Any question? Any comments that you might have? So with that, it's the final step of this workshop. If you had any question, difficulty related to this homework or any other section of this workshop, just send me an email so I would try to help you. And also I would share the recording of this workshop with you as well, in case you want to just go through the steps or the materials again. Any question, any comments? I would just wait a couple of more minutes, but if you don't have any question, just so you can just feel free to go. So I would just wait a couple of minutes in case you have any questions. Yes, we have access to the prediction features as far as I believe. But it needs the instant discovery, which I'm not sure. Okay, it needs a Salesforce account now. As far as I know, we don't have access to the Salesforce account. But it might worth to try it in the free trial version. But as far as I know, we don't have that license. But I would just ask and see if we have that license for the Salesforce, and I will get back to you. But it seems that it needs a Salesforce account besides the Tableau. And also for the signing up for the mailing list for data visualization, it's in the CCGT workshop mailing list that we sent the announcement and the flyer for the weekly workshops in each week. Still, we don't have the list served for the data visualization yet, but we are trying to create one for the data visualization as well. And as soon as we created one, I would just share that with you. Yes, it was the first one in the series of the Tableau and Tableau Desktop. So this one was the pre-processing step for creating the data set that we would use for the Tableau Desktop visualization. So it was just the first round of the Tableau Prep. And the next week, we would have the introductory or beginner level for the Tableau Desktop. And after that, intermediate section and advanced section. So the next 3 weeks, we would have the Tableau sessions, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And this one was for the Tableau Prep as an introductory to data cleaning and preparation. Yeah. Yes, you would receive an email about the details of those 3 different workshops in the upcoming weeks. The first one would be you should receive on Monday, the next Monday, and after that also we try to send the emails on the weekly basis on the Mondays. So yeah, you should receive the details for those workshops as well. Yeah.
I did have a question. At the very end, when you ran the flow for the Excel sheet that you just created, did
Right.
it export to an Excel sheet? Because I ran the flow, but nothing exported to Excel. I think I missed that part. I apologize.
Yes, let me try that again. So I remove the output and create a new output here. So the save output is the file, and the browse is just want to save it into my download folder. So I just named the output training 2 to just make sure that we create a new one. Accept that. And the output type is the Microsoft Excel. And here, I just want to create a new worksheet, which I called it sheet 1. So create new worksheet. And make sure there is no error or a red flag here. And click on the run flow. And it says that the finished running flow. And if I go back to my download folder, I see that output training 2, which I'm able to open it into the Microsoft Excel. So
Perfect. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Yeah, so I have a question
Okay, sure.
relating to the. So is this the very first one related to this Tableau series, or is there one before this, or is this like an introduction to Tableau?
It was about the Tableau Prep, which was the introductory section to the how to clean and prepare the data for the visualization. And in the next 3 weeks, we would focus on the Tableau desktop, which is the main product of the Tableau for the visualization, into 3 different levels of beginner, intermediate, and advanced sections. Yeah.
Okay, so for today's workshop, we use the prep version with the flow, but then I see. So within the next 3 difficulty level workshops, this will use the desktop version.
Yes, yeah.
Into the prep.
Yes, yeah. Instead of the prep, in the next 3 weeks, we would use the Tableau desktop, which is the main product of the Tableau for the visualization. This product, Tableau Prep, is only for the data preparation, not directly data visualization, creating charts or graphs. You see that there's no option to create the charts or graphs here. Yeah.
So basically what we did, or what you did in this entire, from what I'm seeing on this graph in front of me, that entire process is just data cleaning itself, right?
Yes, data cleaning, preparation, calculating some fields that we would use on later on for the visualization. Yeah.
Okay. So, all right.
Yeah.
So basically, so it's this workshop and then those 3 other workshops will kind of count. Is that all in one series, or is this how does it work?
You can attend each one you want. So it's just, we just separated them into 3 different levels for the Tableau desktop, beginner, intermediate, and advanced sessions. But you can just feel free based on the outline. You can just access the outline in the website if you have our website. So you should be able to access those outlines and be able to see if you are interested to access, for example, maybe you are familiar with the Tableau desktop in the introductory and intermediate sessions, and you are just looking for the advanced options like creating dashboards, stories, or publishing the dashboard stories in the online web platform. So we can just access the advanced, but you are feel free to just choose whatever sessions that you might need for registration in the next weeks. Yeah.
Okay. And will there be email reminders for all 3 of those difficulty levels, or is it?
Yes, we would send 3 different emails in each week for different workshops. Yeah.
Okay. Because the way I found this workshop was from it was also there was one email where one part of it was a GIS workshop series, and the second part was this of that email. That's
yes, yeah, that was the idea of my colleague to combine the emails together, but I believe that we had a better performance last week that we just sent the separate emails for data visualization workshop and the ArcGIS workshop separately. So sorry if it was confusing to combine the ArcGIS workshop and the data visualization workshop. Sorry.
Okay, but as far as the Tableau workshops for the summer, this is the first one.
Right, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was just making sure. Other than that, yeah, I have no other questions then. Thank you for taking the time to present this stuff.
Good, thank you. Thank you for attending.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good one.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.